for paired sample t-test. In movie 1 on paired sample t-test, we already learned some steps that gonna take us to SPAS outputs. Step 1 is to go to analyze. Step 2, compare means. Next, paired samples t-test, and move both variables, for example, pre-test and post-test score, to the paired variables box. And finally, we're gonna click on OK. So these are the steps in order to perform SPSS. So we're gonna go to data for practice. So I have created fictitious data. They are not real for practice. In this study, I want to find out whether my intervention or my program is effective or not. So I'm in my research design, I asked 25 participants, to read 6 engaging best-selling novels for half a year, for 6 months. Basically, they're gonna finish 1 book per month. So my intention is to change their perception of extensive reading and their practice of extensive reading. So, reading is so important. Unfortunately, a lot of people do not do it. Research after research, show consistent results that, reading habit has declined over the years among the populations in various countries. So I am interested in changing their perception and the practice. That is why I collect the data from the subjects who participate in my study on their perception, and how do I measure the perception of the participants of extensive reading. So basically, I have 3 questions in order to measure their perception before the experiment, before I ask them to read 6 novels within a period of 6 months. The first item is extensive reading is fun, and the scale that I use in my research is 1 to 5. I strongly disagree to strongly agree. The second item is extensive reading provides enormous benefits. And the last item is time spent on extensive reading is worthwhile. So the 3 items here measure the perception of the subjects of extensive reading. So I have 1 item only that measure the amount of time they devote to extensive reading per week before the intervention, before I ask them to read the 6 novels. And this question is like this: what is on average, how much time do you spend on extensive reading per week? And this is what we call the pre-observation or pre-experiment data collection. And then I ask the participants to read the 6 novels. I provide the 6 novels for free in order to motivate, in order to keep the participants involved from the beginning of the research to the ending of the research. And 6 months is over. I invite the participants to fill in the questionnaire again, and the same question. Extensive reading is fun. Okay, the post experiment. Extensive reading provides enormous benefits. Time and another item. Time spent on extensive reading is worthwhile. So basically, there are they are the same items used in the post-test. And the participant also answer the question related to the average amount of time they spend on extensive reading per week in the post-test. And this is the data that we collected. So since there are 3 items that measure the perception of the participant of extensive reading, we need to add, we need to add them up. And this is this total score for the extensive reading perception pre-experiment, and this is the total score of extensive reading perception post-experiment. And this is the time they spend on extensive reading before the experiment and the time they spend on extensive reading after the experiment. So right now we are ready to perform paired sample t-test. So you still remember the steps, okay? A couple of steps only. We go to analyze, we go to compare means, we go to paired samples t-test, and it's very useful. SPS allows us to perform, multiple pairs at the same time. So you can perform pair 1, pair 2, pair 3 simultaneously in SPSS. So now, in order to make it so easy, I just right-click and I click on display variable name. So now I want to move a perception total pre, and then I highlight both of them. This is the first pair that we're going to compare. We want to compare the perception before the experiment and the perception after the experiment of the 25 subjects who participate in the study. So I can move them here. That's the first pair to compare. Now I can highlight both time spent on extensive reading pre-experiment and time spent on extensive reading post-experiment. And now you have both pair. So what is next? We just click on OK. So this is the paired sample t-test results. So let's try to make sense of the numbers here. You can see this is the first pair 1. Pair 1, the total score for perception of extensive reading pre-experiment, and total score for perception of extensive reading post-experiment. So it seems that, the perception of the participants, have changed from quite negative, 2.24. You remember the scale: 1, strongly disagree, 2, disagree, 3, neutral, 4, agree, 5, strongly agree. So quite negative perception before the experiment, and the perception have changed. The mean score for the overall perception is 3.73. But we don't know whether, this, the two means are significantly different or statistically significant or not. We need to go to paired sample t-test table. Similarly, ladies and gentlemen, for pair number 2, the amount of time have dramatically increased from the pre-experiment to the post-experiment. On average, the subjects spend 1.02 hours per week on extensive reading before the experiment, and now they spend 3.48 hours per week on extensive reading. So possibly there's a good news that, the experiment where we asked the participants to read the novels, have produced intended results. It has transformed, the way they conduct or the way they practice extensive reading. Now they start to practice extensive reading. They read and read and read. But again, it might happen by chance, ladies and gentlemen, unless we go to inferential statistic result. In this case, it is this table. I want to cut this movie short for easy, sharing. So I shall see you in video 3, which will be the last one for paired sample t-test.